What is the future of artificial intelligence or AI for marketing professionals specifically? What kind of offers work best in 2023? And what are the most important assets that marketing teams need to create for sales professionals? Those are the topics on today's show. And joining me today is Timothy Byland, the founder of Upscale. Timothy, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to discuss these topics with you. It's really, I love talking about AI, and it's something we are constantly trying to implement in-house for us and for our clients as well. So it's always good to hear other people's opinions on that as well.
Yeah, and let me tell you how I found Tim. I found Tim. I don't remember, Tim, if you reached out to me or if I saw a post somewhere from you. But I immediately took note of what Tim was up to because a lot of what he's posting, both on his YouTube channel, Upscaling with Tim, and or Scaling with Tim, right? Is it Scaling with Tim?
Yeah.
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 Both on the YouTube channel, Scaling with Tim, and on here on LinkedIn. He's posting a lot of really valuable information that um, anybody watching should be able to implement into their own processes in marketing. So I would highly recommend that if you're in marketing or in sales, you should definitely connect with Tim on LinkedIn and check out a lot of the stuff he's posting there. It's really valuable stuff. And some of that stuff we're going to get into today because some of the questions that I prepared for us to talk through are things that I've seen Tim actually post about. But before we get into those, Tim, let's start with a little background on you. You know, we've connected here on LinkedIn. I've checked out your YouTube channel, as I just mentioned. It's all really great stuff. I really enjoy it. Tell me a little bit more about yourself, your background, and the types of clients that you're currently working with.
Yes, I've been in the online space for a long time. I would say maybe 5 years. Worked with different agencies doing pretty much what they wanted me to do before I started Upskill Partner for a bit over a year ago, where I work primarily with agencies, but I work with all kinds of online service-based businesses. So we help them grow. It kind of depends on the offer, but usually they have some kind of monthly retainer because I usually help marketing agencies is my primary thing, and we help them get 50K new MRR within 3 to 5 months. So that's kind of the offer we have here. I also have a little bit background in sales with a couple of years ago, but I've mainly been working with the online space and getting clients over the internet pretty much.
That's awesome. Yeah, and we're going to talk about some of your connectivity with sales and how marketing can connect with sales in better ways. I have one client that I'm working with now, and as a very common problem that I'm sure you've seen before, I've seen it before too, is that the different departments are in complete silos. And so they have an engineering department in one silo, they have a sales department in another silo, and then us in the marketing department, which is outsourced, is in a completely different silo. And those silos, when they're not working together, are not able to build upon the width and breadth of success that we could have because we're all doing our own separate things. So that's always a key thing. And we'll talk a little bit about sales in a bit here. What are some of the things that you help agencies do specifically? Like, what are some of the areas that you go, okay, these are the areas where if we implement these things with agencies, we will get them to that 50K in monthly RR or monthly RR.
So it kind of depends on their specific ICP. But first of all, that's something that we help them with to find out their exact ICP. So the ideal client, the ICP. And then once we have found that out, and we have done some research with that, which I'm using AI, a lot of AI to actually get that information. Of course, you can always look up and trying is just doing outreach, for example, could be very helpful in that aspect. But I think getting your first foot in the door in a new industry is you can use AI to get a good understanding of a new industry. So that's where we kind of use AI in that aspect. But after we have got the ICP nailed down, we start with, usually we start with some kind of outreach. So it could be everything from email, social media. We use pretty much all of the different outreach methods, and then we try to combine them. So we try to make them work together, we use some kind of sales assets and stuff like that to bring them to one place, or Yeah, and because most of the times, especially if you do it through social media, which is something I think beginner agencies do a lot, is outreach through social media, and they mainly maybe they only focus on Facebook, for example. I think a lot of people are in different social media platforms, so just because they don't respond to you on LinkedIn, for example, and they could, yeah, it's likely that they will respond on Facebook. So finding different ways to reach out to them. Of course, you need to have it systemized so you both know when to send the message and when to follow up, but also you not annoy them. So there is some different ways with that, but getting the outreach fixed is something we do early, and then we try to also implement the inbound aspect of, yeah, getting clients inbound as well, because I think that's exponential and something that you can build long term, with less, yeah, less work for more output. So
Mm.
those are the two main things, like inbound and outbound. First of all, it's the outbound, and then we try to implement the inbound through, yeah, it's mainly LinkedIn and YouTube, which is what I do as well. So that's
Nice.
where we have our expertise in those areas.
Very cool. Very cool. That's awesome. So yeah, definitely. If you're interested in, if you're an agency and you want to work with somebody like Tim who can help you out, like definitely check out all of his stuff. I'm gonna jump straight into the deep end, meaning we're gonna go through maybe one of the toughest questions on today's show, and that is related to artificial intelligence or AI, which is getting a ton of attention right now. I was just listening to Marc Andreessen talking to Joe Rogan about AI. I've heard Lex Friedman talk to a number of people about AI at the cutting edge. Um, and It's a really interesting topic to me. But I think that there's different areas that we're going to address here. One is, what kind of jobs is it going to take away? That's my next question. But the first question is, starting in a more grounded place, how are you currently using AI as a marketing professional today?
Yeah, so we're using it for multiple areas. I think some of them we're still kind of trying to perfect it and see, yeah, perfect the way that we work with AI. But some ways that, yeah, I think the way that we have the most use of AI at the moment is for your personalized first lines. So we do a lot of outreach, as I said, and work with email, for example, where it could be pretty hard to get people to open and especially read. So I think the first sentence is really important to get them to, yeah, read the whole message and kind of get an approval for them and see that we have done some research. But doing like manual first lines, personalized first lines, it's very time consuming. You can also hire someone, but that's pretty expensive, and it still takes time to have a human do it. So we use AI to do that, which I actually posted a video on YouTube about how the prompt that we use, as well as the process that we have there, to get like really personalized lines, and not the generic ones that you might get if you just put in like, here is a website and here's the person that we're reaching out to, can you write a personalized first line, and then it's really generic, and I don't think that will help with outreach. And you can see that through pretty much. So that's probably the main thing we're doing at the moment with AI. As I said, we're also doing it for using it for ICP research. So for all of our new clients, we're doing it for research. But one thing I think it's really like intriguing, and something I'm really looking into at the moment, is actually using it for both when you hire someone, as well as onboarding process for new clients. So we have pretty much automated the whole onboarding process at our agents at the moment. So from the point that they sign contracts, for example, we have a questionnaire that we get sent automatically, and invoice and stuff like that. So that's pretty much automated at the moment. But I want some kind of customer support. So I talked to someone that works with AI chatbots, so you can pretty much put in all kinds of information in there. So my idea is to have that instead of SOPs, especially for if we bring someone in house, we hire someone, we can have like a chatbot instead of different, maybe 10 different SOPs on how we work with different things in the agency. We can have it as a chatbot. So I think it's a lot easier for them to do some research and find out how to actually work with that. So yeah, I think that's the most intriguing at the moment, but I'm still yeah, in the middle of trying to figure that out completely on how to use these AI chatbots. But yeah, I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I watched your video on writing those first lines to different connections, and one of the things I've seen in the past, when we've done LinkedIn campaigns with clients in the past, a lot of times what we would always recommend to them is if you're going to go try to connect with somebody, try to find, if you can, a shared human experience that you've had with them, right? So LinkedIn campaigns work really well if you want to go connect with alumni from your school. Like if there's a shared human experience that you both have had, it works really well to be able to your percentage chance of connecting with that person increases exponentially if you're able to communicate that you've had a shared experience of some kind. And so what I really liked about that, about what you're talking about with this first line of communication to somebody, you're basically having the AI go out, and I highly recommend you go watch Tim's video on this as well. But you're recommending that the AI basically takes a look at their profile and looks at all the different things that it can get a better understanding of who they are to better write that opening line, which I thought was brilliant. So very, very cool stuff. Very, very cool stuff there. Um, are there specific AI platforms that you tend to like over others?
So I've tried a lot of different ones. Yeah, like I've even tried an AI to write like a different sales assets yeah, for me both to have after calls, but also like in outreach. I didn't really like neither of them. I think like creating sales asset yourself is something that's really yeah, it provides you a lot of leverage because it's something you do once and then you can use it, yeah, pretty much for a long time at least. So the main things I've been using is ChatGPT, as I said, for your personal search lines, and then I'm trying different chatbots at the moment, AI chatbots. So I can't really recommend one in there yet, but yeah, those are the main two types of AIs that I'm currently working with.
Cool. Very cool. Very cool. So let me ask you this big question, because those in the know are claiming that AI will do everything from completely altering the economy by replacing millions of white collar jobs, to going full Skynet from Terminator and destroying all the humans. Like you'll get every opinion on what AI is gonna do. But in the next decade, what roles do you see AI taking over, or what things do you see AI doing that humans are doing today in the marketing space, particularly?
Yeah, so I don't really see any stop with that, to be honest. Like I think it's growing so exponentially. So yeah, we already see some kind of AI creating ads for Facebook, for example,
Mm-hmm.
which I think those are not at the level of a human yet. But I think that within a near future we will definitely see those performing higher than a human being. So I think like just focusing on how to work with AI and how to use it in your advantage will be what will be the most, yeah, the highest paying jobs and what most people will be focusing on in the future. So I think just yeah, you need to learn how to use AI because in the next 10 years, I think pretty much all of these standard jobs will be a lot different and you will need to know how to use AI. So yeah, I would almost say all of them. I think it will change do really big changes in the job market. So I think a lot of these jobs that we currently have will be completely different and only pretty much only using AI to your advantage. So yeah, a lot of changes. I don't know what do you think on that topic?
Yeah, it's a really tough one to predict, because I think what happens is that people will try something. They'll try something like ChatGPT, and then it will spit out a result that is um, not very advanced, and then they'll think to themselves, "Oh yeah, this thing's way behind. It'll never catch up." But usually, what ChatGPT is returning to you is based off the information that you provided to it. So what you'll see is, with the people who are using AI really, really well, somebody like you, for example, you are strategically figuring out what to feed the AI, the machine learning, so that it gets you the right answer that you're looking for. And so there's a wide variance of how well AI is performing today. I'm a little bit more experienced with it in terms of, you can see all my posters and stuff in the background. I also write films and TV shows and things like that. And in fact, I'm filming a movie in a couple months here. And so I'm a little bit more familiar with trying to get the AI to write things just to see how well it could do in that regard. And I think what people, like, I've done this before too. You're like, hey, write me a script about XYZ, and it'll write a script, and it's horrible. It just does not. It is not a good script. It doesn't work very well. And I think that a lot of the writers have said like, well, see, look, it's not very good. But I think that the misnomer that people are missing is it's only as good as the inputs that it has available to it. And because of that, the more people focus on the inputs, the better the outputs become from the AI. So, for example, while I do think that, let's say, I could write a better film than ChatGPT could write with very little inputs, I think that there's some people that could go out there and say, I have here's a Shakespearean play. I want you to write this Shakespearean play, but write it in the style of Quentin Tarantino. And it basically, given those plot points and given the fact that it can identify all of the things that are happening in that particular story, and then interpreting that into a film that sounds like something that Quentin Tarantino would write, I'd go, I think it would probably do that pretty well. I haven't tried it. I haven't tested it yet. But if it's not doing it well today, it's going to do it pretty well tomorrow, right? Like it's just learning at a pace that's unbelievable. So I think about that, and I take that and I think about that in my own work, and I think about, a lot of times I'm preparing funnels for people. And so I'll take a look at, like, what is your business model? How does your business model look? As a fractional CMO, I'm thinking to myself, well, where's the marketplace going? What are the needs of your customer base? What is your competition doing? And if I look at those three things and then I go, okay, what is your offer to your customers? What is that? How does that offer function? How do they go through a decision making process? And then how do I come along that decision making process with marketing so that we build a funnel that's appropriate to their decision making process? And I think to myself, I don't think we're that far from the AI being able to do quite a bit of what I just described. It can't do all of it today, and I think that for at least in the next few years, maybe 5 years, it's going to need someone like me to tell it what to try to do. But if I think about it in the context of thinking, okay, well, what if I sat with an AI and just went through minute detail by minute detail about how I come to a decision about what I'm going to put in a funnel or in a marketing campaign, or why I'm suggesting what I'm suggesting, um, I think it could get pretty good at doing my job. You know what I mean? Like, so I think the way you said it is the most accurate way. I think it's going to take over a lot of jobs, and what we need to do then as professionals is learn how that we can start using it to augment what we're already doing. At some time, may it take over our jobs completely? It's a possibility, but at least we can be on the cutting edge of knowing, like, let's tell it to do these things because these things will lead to better success for our clients, better success for us, and we'll see where it goes from there. But I think it's a little bit more fascinating to look at it from, uh, like, how long have you been in the business arena thus far?
Yes, I've had this agency for a bit over a year, maybe 1 year and 3 months. But I've been in this before and worked with AI before,
Mm-hmm.
and I totally agree with what you said before, that you need some kind of human input in order for it to work. Like, I had big problems with finding the perfect prompt for it to write the personalized first lines.
Right.
It tended to be very generic, and especially, like, I saw some people in the space working with, they let the AI create a cold email and copy, so what they send to the client, and it's not really in the cutting edge of writing cold emails. So it's kind of just like in the middle. But if you learn to tell it how to write the emails, it will benefit so much. So I think it will always, or for the near future, it will need the human touch. But I think a lot of these jobs, like before, I tried paying someone to create these personalized first lines, but now I don't need someone else to do it. I just do the input from my side, and have the prompt there. So it's removing those yeah low end jobs, I would say, and then if you learn how to use AI, it will benefit me a lot. But it will always need me to do the input in the beginning for
Yeah.
the next coming years, I think.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I think part of it too is interesting because I'm assuming, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm assuming you're quite a bit younger than I am, let's say, right? Like I've worked for 20 years now in marketing. And so for me, I'm at a different place where I'm looking at AI and thinking to myself, okay, I probably have another 20 years in my career, let's say 25 years, maybe 30 years. What do I need to know about AI and how do I need to adapt to AI? But so everybody at a different stage of their career needs to look at AI in a different way to understand how far it's going to go in the time that you still have available in your career. Now, I know that sounds like it's a very scary thing that a lot of people would not like to actually talk about, but I think it's kind of imperative because what you don't want to do is like if I was just graduating college right now, right? My advice to a lot of people graduating college, because I used to work at a university where I helped students and alumni start companies, do startup activities. And if I was, that was about 5, 6 years ago. But now I would tell students like you need to understand, you need to pick an area of expertise that you want to be good at, and you need to understand how AI will affect that area of expertise, and you need to be good at it. Like that, there's not a lot of other options for you. Even if you're going to go into a trade that's not a white collar job, but maybe is like you're going to do construction or you're going to do whatever, learn how AI is going to affect construction because it's going to affect construction in some way, shape, or form. I'll give you another example, and I'm sure you've had lots of experiences like this. I went and I told you about this short film I'm doing. And before I do the short film, I'm actually filming a table read with local actors. So they're not SAG actors; they're just local actors that I happen to know. And I'm going to practice because I'm directing both the table read and I'm going to direct the film as well, co-direct the film. And I needed a contract. I needed a contract for them to sign that says basically we're just doing this table read together and that's it. And I went through, like SAG has contracts, but they want you to use them in order to get access to those contracts. I went through and found a bunch of other contracts that were through professional lawyers that were offering contracts, and all of them had like some kind of, you'd start building the contract out and then you'd hit a paywall, and I'd be like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. I spent like 15 minutes, so I spent an hour and a half, probably maybe 2 hours looking for a contract that would work. And I go, you know what, this is not a complex contract, this is a very simple contract. I could sit down and write the contract myself. It's not like it takes like you don't need to be an amazing lawyer to figure out how to write this contract. It's a very, very simple contract. And I go, I'm just going to go to ChatGPT and ask it to write me an actor contract. And I had a contract 30 seconds later. You know what I mean? Like it did it easily, and I'm going to have to adapt it and I'm going to have to adjust it a little bit. But my point is that is people would pay lawyers, what, $300 an hour, sometimes $500 an hour to do a contract for them. And I can get a very, very similar contract in about 30 seconds for free. I think it's going to impact a lot of jobs in a lot of ways. Now, this is not me saying you should use ChatGPT for legal advice. Don't do that. Don't do that right now. We're not that far along. But I think in the future, these are some of the lawyers have to figure out, like, okay, how do I use ChatGPT for somebody to go ahead and just enter some information and then get a contract that we can stand behind. And I think it's going to change really rapidly. So I would mirror what you said. You got to be you have to be knowledgeable of how it works, and you have to know when you can use it for pretty powerful stuff. And I've really appreciated what you've done in your videos because it's opened my eyes to, like, for example, I would not have thought to have the AI basically go and look through someone's profile to then write a first line. I wouldn't have thought of that, right? So it's helpful for me to hear, oh, that's how other people are using it. That's awesome. I didn't even know it could do that right now. So learning from people like you, I think, is a really important thing to do. So any other thoughts about AI that you want to throw out there for folks?
No, I don't think so. I actually did the same thing with my contract. I did it, asked ChatGPT, and then I sent it over to the lawyer to get the time frame shorter for them. As you said, it's especially when you're starting out, it could be expensive with paying a lawyer to do it. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny that you brought that up, since I've done the same thing pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a good way to do it. Have ChatGPT write your first draft, review that, and then send it to the lawyers to get it shored up
Yeah.
correctly. That's a really, really good idea. I love that. Let's switch up topics here a little bit. We've been talking about AI for a little bit here, but one of the things that you and I went back and forth about on LinkedIn Messenger was talking a little bit more about offers. And an offer in marketing is essentially something that we give away that entices action from our target audience. So an offer could be a product, but an offer could also be a free ebook, a white paper, whatever that looks like. Product, services, discounts even can be offers, although sometimes those are used as hooks instead of offers. In other words, we're offering something of value in exchange for our target audience to take some action. So what are some of the offers that you're seeing work really well in 2023?
Yeah, I think the offers that are directly connected to revenue, is always the most powerful. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on with all of my clients. For example, I have one that's working with web design, which, it can't really be seen as something that's directly connected to revenue. And what you can do is kind of go into the area of, like conversion rate optimization, and talk about the different, the increase in conversion rate it would mean to have a high quality website compared to a low quality website. So even if that's not their main focus, it's something that I ask them to check the stats with their current client to see, what conversion rate I had before they worked with them, and what they worked with or had after implementing the new website, and it was actually a good result. So that's something we started to use in, yeah, both in outreach or paid ads, mentioning these things, as well as, having some a calculator where you could see like the different, because they all usually know what how much traffic they have to their website before. So as long as they know that and know the conversion rate they currently have, and then we could see and calculate the difference in revenue it would mean for them, to improve it by a bit. And as I said, this if you're working with web design, they might not be it's not conversion rate optimization that's their main thing, but it's still something you could bring up in these calls, and to have some like an extra thing in there, because that's usually something that, yeah, makes them a little bit more interested in your offer. So yeah, everything that's connected to revenue, and that's the same thing with talking about your offer, in a video call or in outreach. It's always important to have some kind of dream outcome, not just saying that we deliver web design, for example, or we deliver another service. And you should always talk about the outcome that will come from your service. So yeah, that's something I feel like a lot of people are missing out on. The thing that they're not interested in your, the way you work or how your service works really. They might ask a few questions about it, but what they're really interested in is the end, the outcome from your service, which I think a lot of people know, but they don't really use it in, for example, paid ads or outreach, or inbound when they mention their offer. So yeah, as long as it's connected to revenue, I think it's really good. And there's some other things that you also could focus on, but that's also always the most effective one, from what I've seen. I don't know if you have had any experience with this kind of offers. What's worked the best for you and your clients?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I love tying it to revenue. I love tying it to outcomes because even like your offer that you state on your LinkedIn profile is help you grow to 50K. I think is in monthly RRR or I keep saying RRR. That's a movie. RR recurring revenue. Um, I think that's really good. I think that's really really strong. I think one of the things that I do is that when I build a marketing funnel and I did a video that came out. I talked about this on the show last week, and I did a video I put it out as a video on YouTube. I edited it down into a video. The number one thing that you need to do if you're building a marketing funnel is match it to the buyer's purchase process, right? Because if you don't match it to the buyer's purchase process, you're always going to be hitting them with marketing or sales communication that isn't at the right isn't where they're at. And so they're just going to get annoyed with you. But if you're hitting them where they're at in their buying process, so what that looks like is looking at like, are they aware that they have a problem and that they need to make a decision about it? Or are you just kind of branding yourself as somebody who helps them come up with ideas? When they realize that they have a problem and they want to fix it, then they're starting to do research on that problem, right? And like, what do I need to learn about this problem to make a better decision? And then as they get lower, now they're narrowing the number of options they have available to them, because they go, oh, these 3 to 5 companies I think are where I want to make a decision. And of course, once they get into like 2 to 3 companies, now you're looking at different proposals, and you're also looking at which one of these companies is best aligned with me personally. And so we just take our marketing and our sales and we just try to hit them where they're at in their buying process so that we can be most helpful to them. And so what I try to do is I try to structure offers around their buying process that would help them make a better business decision that has an outcome that moves them down their buying cycle and that makes them more comfortable with what they're going to do. So I think revenue is a great one, especially for companies where the decision-making process is maybe not as complex. If it's a simpler decision-making process, then you can go straight to revenue and be like, well, I can deliver 500 or 50K in monthly recurring revenue in 6 months. Like, that's a really compelling offer. Sometimes I will have an outcome that is a little bit less tied to revenue because it's higher in their buying process. So they're not ready to really be looking at like revenue. They're more looking at it like, let's just say they might have, let's say that they're 3 years out from making a decision. I have one client that I'm recommending this to. They're in an industry where they are looking at the Fortune 100 companies or Fortune 1000 companies. That's who they work with. Like, they deal with a very high-end kind of customer. Well, a lot of high-end customers, their desired result or their outcome that they're looking for is going to be tied to revenue for sure when they get closer to making a decision. It might be related to cost. Sometimes it's related to cost, but a lot of times it's related to revenue, like you said. And the one outcome that they want high in their buying process is they really want to talk to their peers. They don't want to talk to salespeople because what they're trying to do in their industry is they're trying to understand where the industry is going and they don't want to be left behind because they're in the most competitive companies in the world, basically, right? And so what they don't want to do is they want to know from their peer groups how are they thinking about the marketplace? How are they going to adapt and change to what's going on in the marketplace around them? And so to your point about tying it to like an outcome, I'll tie it to something along the lines of understand what your peers are doing, right? So you should show up to this event because we're going to invite all your peer group to this event. And instead of our organization telling you how to do something, we're there to facilitate a conversation of your peers. And that's really compelling to people in that frame of reference because they go, I want to show up and talk to my peers because my peers are the smartest people in the world sometimes about that specific thing that they're dealing with. And so, but it's really important that it ties to the outcome. And the outcome in this case is I'll understand how my peers are thinking about the next 3 years. And that's a very compelling outcome. Like, oh, okay, cool. And it is tied to revenue, even if you don't talk about it as tied to revenue, because someone at that level, especially C-suite in some of the Fortune 1000 companies, they're thinking, what does my revenue look like in 5-10 years? They're not thinking about what their revenue looks like tomorrow. They already know. They already have a really good system for understanding what that revenue looks like. So if you can tie it to an outcome that's related to, I need to know what my peers are thinking, and then they insert because 10 years down the line, I want to be on the cutting edge of things. I don't want to be behind everybody else. That's usually a pretty compelling way to look at it too. So I think that's tying it to outcomes that are. Now, that's not a very tangible outcome. It's not something that you can do late in the funnel, right? Because late in the funnel, they are way more concerned about costs and ROI, to your point about revenue. The bottom of the funnel, you can't have the same like meet with your peer group kind of activity. You have to have the cost calculators, like you talked about. You have to have the sales assets that are explaining like maybe a cost benefit analysis, case studies about what other people have done in the past. But near the top of the funnel, you can be a little bit you can provide a benefit or an outcome that is not as closely tied to revenue with the companies that I work with. But if you're dealing with e-commerce, you pretty much always need to tie that to revenue. You have to. So yeah, I think that's really, really good. What are some of the things that you've seen with some of the people that you've worked with where they really responded to an offer you put out?
You mean me personally or with my clients?
Either way. Yeah, it could be you personally or one of your clients.
You mean one offer or like an outcome specifically, or what do you mean exactly?
So like for example, you used a good example before where you said this web design firm. And by the way, I love this. I love this because when I build a funnel, at every stage of the funnel, I place a how do we know if we're performing well at this stage of the funnel metric associated with it. So in the case I just gave where I'm saying we're going to invite everybody to a peer group, it would be like, well, we expect 15 people to show up to this peer group event. If we get 5 people, that's not as successful as we should be. So what happened with our communication? What happened with our invitations? Did we do something incorrectly, right? So I love the fact that you said for the web design firm, it was we need to communicate to people that a better designed website around user experience will get a better conversion rate. Because the reason why that's so cool is because when your fractional CMO like me looks at the chart, I have a case where this is happening with one of my clients. We're killing it with LinkedIn ads. I mean, the click-through rate is insanely high, but as soon as they hit their landing page, the conversion rate's terrible. And I'm like, well, that tells me the landing page sucks, right? So I got to fix the landing page. So yeah, any kind of example like that where you say, just like with your web design firm example, like, hey, the offer should look like this instead of what they had before. What's another example you might have?
Yeah, so I think another way, like there is the agencies that I work with, for example, this web design firm that doesn't really have a tangible outcome, or it's tangible because it's a new website, but they don't have a specific dream outcome before I come in there. So that's usually one of the first thing that I do. I think if you can't really connect it to revenue, one thing that I saw worked really good for for a couple of my clients were to connect it to speed and time. Instead, I think that's for the more high end offers. So that's, of course, you're not going to frame it. If you frame it in the wrong way, it might seem like you just haste for everything and do it too fast. But if you make sure that you can make them understand that you provide a really good service in a short time frame, and that's something they're really interested in. So that's where the case studies and testimonials could come in, as you said before. I was actually having a look at the post. I think it was a post about the thing you just mentioned about the funnel, different funnel steps. And I wrote it down somewhere that I was going to read through it, all because I had to go and leave the computer just when I saw it. But I read that first part about the top of the funnel, which I thought was really interesting, with the things you mentioned there, because that's not really something I've worked a lot with before. And I try to keep the end result as tangible as possible because I thought that worked the best. But I've also seen that with these high-end offers, and like you mentioned, I think you need a different approach when it's a longer sales process, and you need to start a little bit different. So, for example, some of these web design could charge 50K for one this website, for example, which I think that's kind of where I need to where I can improve the sales process by implementing those things you just mentioned. And while, for example, I have one agency where we help or where they help e-commerce brands with Facebook ads, where I think e-commerce gets so much emails, and it's not that high-end service. It's usually between 2.5 maybe to 5K max is what I work with, at least for monthly retainers. And so I think it kind of depends, as you say, with the different types of offers. So far I've mainly worked with tangible, so either revenue or time. It could be time frame is the two things that I've seen the most success with. So it could also be like just having a short not trial, but a kind of a trial package, and where you like almost guaranteeing results within that. And if you hit that, they need to continue with a long-term contract. And that could be something that's really powerful. So, for example, getting the first client within or a first couple of sales within a specific time frame, maybe 72 hours, a specific amount of sales for the e-commerce brands within 72 hours, just to show that they're good, and then we could hit the long-term contract instead. So that's one way you also can, because I'm not a big fan of these long-term contracts. I know a lot of paid ads agencies have like a minimum of 3 to 6 months of contract, because they say they need to be sure that it could take some time to get ads up and running. And I think if you're good and you're working with a specific niche, and they're usually able to hit the ground running pretty much immediately. So if it's something they got experience in, I always recommend to have a quick result, and then you can take it from there if you want them in the long contracts. So as to answer your question, I think it kind of depends on if it's a high-end offer, or if it's a little bit less valuable per month, for example, or per project. So I'll definitely have something to learn with the high-end offers from listening to you. So I will be continuing to watch your LinkedIn and your other social medias as well.
Yeah, I've noticed, because so I don't have a lot of background in e-commerce. I have a little bit of background in e-commerce. I have a lot more background in B2B sales. Now, B2B lead generation comes in kind of two different formats, which was what you just said, and that is kind of high-end contracts that are going to cost organizations a lot more money. And if that's the case, there's almost always far more stakeholders involved in the decision-making process. So it's not a really quick win. It's like a slow burn that you have to go through the process of and you're usually having to create marketing plans that address different contacts at the organization. So I described how you might treat a C-suite contact by saying you should show up to our peer-to-peer event. But I might say the director at this organization, who's also who's also a stakeholder in the decision, I'm not going to do a peer-to-peer group event for them, because that might cost too much of my marketing dollars to put together. But what I can do instead is I can do a webinar. In fact, the best case scenario is I take what the people in the peer-to-peer group are saying to each other, and then I go, I'm going to make notes on what that is. And then you tell the directors, all of whom would like to become C-suite professionals in the future, you say, we're going to do a webinar about what C-suite people in Fortune 1000 companies are talking about for the future. And now you've provided value, right? Because now I go, I get to think like somebody in the C-suite. That's pretty amazing. So it just kind of depends on, there's a lot of different factors. But when it comes to when you talk about an easier decision, I have a couple clients who have a much easier decision. One client of mine, I'm on their advisory board because they're a startup, and they're far more into the e-commerce type of event. And you need to you need to get to the value a lot faster there, especially if it's a B2B company, like you say, like web development, that usually does not take 5 different people on a team making a decision. It takes 1 or 2 people at the top of the company. It's usually a smaller company too, and they can just say let's go do this. So it does depend a lot on what kind of organization that you're working with, for sure. But that's great stuff. Great conversation. Love that. So my last question for you, and then we'll close out here in a minute. If there's anybody, StreamYard does not tell me if I'm live broadcasting on YouTube, it'll tell me how many people are watching. It does not tell me if there's anybody watching. I know some people will watch this later on, which is very, very cool. I'm going to post it on YouTube later. If you are watching live, feel free and leave us a question too, because if we have a little extra time, we'll answer some of your questions live as well. And I want to give you the chance to ask Tim a question here, because he's got a lot of valuable insights. But for you, Tim, this is my last question, and if we don't get any other questions, we can kind of close it out here. Offers are critical throughout the funnel, as we just talked about. But as we get lower into the funnel, we kind of let sales take over for a lot of companies. If they have a marketing and a sales team, we let sales take over, and they start taking the lead in terms of what it looks like to work with a potential client that we're trying to bring on board. So, how can we help the sales team out with sales assets? I know you have a little bit of a sales background as well. It makes you the perfect person to talk about this. Sales assets are essentially tools that the sales team can use with potential customers to move them along in their decision making process and hopefully close them. So that things look like calculators, one sheets, one pagers, cost benefit analyses, white papers. What are some of the sales assets that you've seen work best for your clients in 2023?
Yeah, I've seen a couple actually that works really good. First of all, I think you mentioned this in the beginning, but I see way too many companies having the marketing team separated from the sales team, which I think is really hurting them a lot. Which is one of the main things I actually ask them and try to make sure that they work together, because you can use a lot of these sales assets both with the marketing as well as in the sales calls. So I think here is one of my favorite is of course the revenue or ROI calculator. If you're able to do that, if you're directly connected to revenue, which if, for example, I always use ROI calculator, which I think is working really good. I know a lot of people that have maybe been a bit hesitant before, but once they see the numbers, they actually get really interested and want to work with me. So that's something that's working really good, really good. And I think for sales assets, you can also have like small like pre-meeting videos is something that's worked really good
Oh,
as well.
yeah.
So you can have either you can have some kind of video sales setter before a meeting, and you can also set small expectations. So kind of shifting the power dynamic. I would say it kind of differentiates between what kind of ICP you're working with. But you can, if you also want to qualify, so you can have a pre-qualification in the meeting telling you which clients you're working with, giving some small expectations, both to pre-qualify, but it also shifts the dynamic a bit, so they feel like they're
Mm.
your perfect candidate, as well as you get some, like you're not working with everyone. You also need to approve of this partnership to in order for you to work with them. So I think that works good. You can also have small like sales assets. If you're, for example, are having maybe have two call close, you can have one. But yeah, if you talk with them and you hear they have some pain points, and usually they are pretty similar, the pain points, if you're working with the same type of industry. And so you can have like pre-made videos and that you can send between the calls, and something that works really good. So for example, if you have a discovery call and you talk about them a lot in this discovery call maybe, and you ask about pain points, they tell you that maybe they have a high churn rate if you're talking with a SaaS business, for example, and then you can have a video already made that you just send after a call, where you specifically talk about how to solve this problem and how to get a better churn rate. So yeah, those I think videos are really good, because that people have a lot longer attention span with videos compared to text format. So I think having these videos is really good. Calculators works really good. I think I mentioned one more thing, but there is some different things. Have you had any sales assets that worked really good for you this year?
That's a really good question. I haven't. So it's really interesting because I'm going to circle back and I want to ask you about those videos too because I love the idea. I love the idea of doing the videos. Um, I don't have any clients currently whose biggest problem is close rates at the bottom of the funnel. Most of my clients right now, they're having problems at the top of the funnel with getting new leads in. So several of my clients, so here's what tends to happen so I primarily work with business to business clients. And I primarily work with shops, I'll call them shops, clients that are not super huge, right? They're usually like, let's say, anywhere from 5 to 50 employees. And so what tends to happen with a smaller company like that is that their growth isn't really smooth. And a lot of times too, I read an article one time that I thought was really perfect. I wish I could link to it right now, but I have no idea where it is. But it was comparing teams that have a growth mindset versus a high performance mindset. And it talked about high performance mindset is usually what a lot of teams have, but that mindset can actually limit growth because you want to do like your high performance thing as opposed to how do I get more clients that also have high performance. You don't want to like sacrifice high performance, but if you focus on growth, you get to a different place instead of focusing on high performance. You make better decisions in terms of being able to grow. And that's where a lot of my clients sit, is that they have a high performance mindset, and I'm trying to give them more of a growth mindset. High performance mindset will say something like, I need to hire one of the most amazing salespeople so that I can grow. Whereas a growth mindset will say, I don't need to hire the best salesperson of all time, but we need to have a really good sales process that we can repeat over and over and over again and make it easy. That's the difference between like a high performance and a growth mindset. Growth mindset is almost always more about, how do I come up with a process that allows me to repeat it and then add more people to that process and grow that way. And I think that this is a long answer to your question. The clients that I'm seeing right now, they tend to focus on leads, then they get one, and then the focus becomes, oh, I need to do high performance, like really help this client out. And then that takes away the focus from the leads. And then what happens is, after that contract has run its course, they come back to me and they're like, oh, we need more leads. And I'm going, yeah, because we took the focus off of finding leads so that you could run your business. And then I have some really smart clients right now. One of the clients I was talking to yesterday, they understand that that's the case, and so they'll have me focus more on the lead generation, and then they just say, "Let me know when I need to step in from a sales standpoint." But we need to have you and your team come up with really good marketing campaigns for us so we can get some inbound leads. But we'll let you focus on that while we focus on running the business and doing services for these folks. So that's a really long answer to say that I have not had to help people recently on improve their close rates. I've had to help them get more leads into the top of the funnel and then nurture those through the mid funnel. So I don't have a good answer for this question. It's a long answer to say I don't have a good answer for this question. No, but I want to come back to something you said, because I love this idea. Can you give me an example of what a pre-meeting video and a post-meeting? So the post-meeting video, you gave a really good example of, like, saying, if you address specific things that you guys talked about, then sending them, I'm assuming you send them an email with a link to a video, whether it's posted on YouTube or posted somewhere else where it's unlisted, maybe, so no one can see it. Can you walk me through that process of what you might send beforehand and then what you might send afterwards?
Yeah. So the pre-meeting video could be really different. A bit different depending on what things you want to bring up. But I think I actually made a LinkedIn post about the structure for maybe, in the beginning, maybe, I don't know exactly when. But so first of all, I like to talk and call out the ICP immediately, because I think that's, as I said, both you can pre-qualify a bit, and maybe that's not, if you don't have a lot of leads, that's maybe not your first thing you want to focus on, that to bring out the leads, that's maybe not the best prospect for you. But you can keep it pretty broad if you want. Just focus on, for example, if you help e-commerce brands, you don't have to say you help fashion brands specifically. You can also say e-commerce brands. But the more specific you get, the better results it will be, of course. You can call out different company sizes, different revenue sizes, different revenue, to make them feel like you help them specifically and you have proven results with them, like businesses like them specifically. And then after that, I usually bring up the most common pain points in that industry. Bring up those and then explain kind of the way that you work, to and not focus on your like service delivery, but rather focusing on how your new way, it doesn't have to be a new way, but your way, and call it new way, but it doesn't have to be new way, but how your way would help with those pain points specifically. So rather than focusing on how you do it, focus on how it solves those pain points, and then you can come in with some case studies. Usually it depends on how many case studies, testimonial stuff you have, but in the beginning, call out the ICP, bring up some case studies to show that these are the type of clients that you have helped and you have proven results with those, because then they will also listen to the whole video and listen more carefully to the whole video, and because they believe in it more. And then, of course, end with some case studies before you have the call to action, and for them to, it doesn't have to be a call to action. If you want to create a VSL before them booking a meeting, and it could work pretty similar with those. But if you have like a VSL on your website, or on maybe an ad, whatever it is, and then you have a pre-call video. Try to make a bit difference, not too much though. It doesn't have to be that much. I would try to focus on making them feel like they are the perfect fit for your service is probably the main thing. I like to focus on there, as well as showing that you're not just talking, that you can get them, for example, 50K in MRR, but also providing with proof, and showing that you actually do this, for a lot of other clients as well. So that's kind of the structure that I have for the pre-call videos. And then it kind of depends if you have like the sales process, how long that is, and the different steps of it. But if you have like a 2-call close, which I feel like it's really popular about, with my clients at least, I think like having different videos in between the meetings, and then you can have a video, or something after, the last call as well. It kind of depends on the size. If it's just 2.5K per month, I tell my clients to try to close it, with the second meeting. But if it's a bigger ticket size, I recommend to have some kind of videos where you also send some more information, about the service. But especially after that call, I think it's really good to have these videos. It doesn't have to be like highly professional and edited videos like YouTube videos. It could just be like a loom of you explaining how you solved this and how you solved it for past clients. So if you can have those in between these meetings, I promise you that there will be a lot more, like the show up rate will also improve by so much between the first and second call. And also they will be a lot more interested and warm. So I think that's something that we have implemented the last couple of months and seen a huge return, of that. So I always make sure that my clients use those type of videos.
That's super cool. In fact, you know what? I'm gonna use one of those videos with a client that I'm trying to close by the end of the month. I'm gonna use one of those videos. I'm gonna make one of those videos maybe today or tomorrow. So quick question. I just wrote an article. I also have a blog on Medium that I host, and I've been defining life cycle stages. And yesterday I defined prospect, and then today I defined lead. And one of the things that you said that I think is really valuable from a lead standpoint is you talked about ICP, so ideal customer profile, and whether or not that the person you're trying to sell to fits in your ideal customer profile. And that pre-video can explain and help them understand if they even need to disqualify themselves. Because one of the things I wrote about was that a lot of leads, you don't even know if they're qualified or disqualified until they get lower into the process, right? And so I love that idea, because now you're protecting yourself. Because if they identify as one of your ideal customer profiles, then they really want to talk to you. And if they don't identify as one of your ideal customer profiles, then they can self-select out, and you don't have to spend time and money trying to pursue them when it's not going to go anywhere. Which I think that's brilliant. So on the one acronym that you used that I don't know if I know what it is, VSP, is that virtual sales pitch, or what does VSP stand for?
I think it was VSL. I'm guessing that's
VSL.
what you.
Yes.
So that's a video sales letter, which is kind of just a video of you selling the service, pretty much.
Nice.
Not selling service. I'm not big into talking a lot about the service and how you work with, how you do the different steps in your service delivery. I'm more into talking about the outcomes and give some explanations how you do the service delivery, but that's usually not what they are the most interested in. So but it stands for video sales letter.
Got it. Video sales letter. I love that. So two of the big takeaways from our conversation today that I think are really fascinating. One is that whenever you're marketing to somebody, focus as much as possible on the outcomes. And if you can get closer to revenue, then get closer to revenue. If you can't get closer to revenue, think in terms of what is the benefit that I can provide that they will see as a valuable outcome, and then go pursue that. That's a huge learning. Whether it's a sales asset, whether it's an offer at the top of the funnel, whether it's whatever. The second big learning is we should all be becoming more and more familiar with AI and how AI is shaping the industry and how we can use AI, and coming up with really creative ideas about how to utilize AI to help solve some of our problems, like the first line introduction that you talked about earlier. That's something that I can anybody listening to this show can go implement that tomorrow if they want to, right? Like that's a really compelling way to do that. So anything else you want to talk about, Tim, before we close it out? I'm going to let people ask questions. If there are people here live and they want to ask a question of one of us, they can do so. But if we don't get any questions here in the next couple minutes, then we'll close it out. I know I should point out Tim is on the other side of the world, so it's probably really late where you are, Tim, or really early, one of the two. Yeah, but you do work with clients in the States, right?
Yeah, most of my clients are based in the US. I have some in UK as well, but yeah, most of them are in the States. So I'm used to these times. I just work a little bit later. That's all. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. Anything
Yeah.
else you want to talk about before we close out the show?
No, I don't think so. I think it was really interesting to discuss these things, especially AI is such a big topic and something I've just looked into a lot more recently. So I think it's really interesting to hear what your thoughts are on that as well. So yeah, thanks for great call. And thanks for great informative meeting. I really like this.
Yeah, thank you for coming
Yeah.
on. I'll have you on again in the future. We'll talk about more stuff. So why don't you go ahead and tell people what's your YouTube channel? Where can they find you on LinkedIn? Where can they find you in other places to get in contact and utilize some of your services?
Yeah, so on YouTube they can find me at Scaling with Tim. So that's where I post some videos. I'm also trying to get into shorter videos as well to provide value in a quicker way. I know people's attention span is just decreasing all the time.
True.
So yeah, that's my YouTube. On LinkedIn, where I also post a lot of content, but in text format. It's just Timothy Byland. I'm sure they can find me through you otherwise, like just searching for your connections and find me
Yeah,
there.
that's true.
Yeah, otherwise it's my website, upskillpartner.com, and you can email me at tim@upskillpartner.com as well. But yeah, that's pretty much where you can find me. Yeah.
Awesome. Then I'll look for some clients that you and I can work together on too. That'd be really fun.
Yeah.
So we'll close out the show there. Thanks everybody for joining us today. If you have any other marketing questions, comment down below, whether you're on LinkedIn and you're watching this later or you're on YouTube and you're watching this later. Any questions that you have, I can put on a future show or I can answer in the questions myself. So either way, let me know and I will answer all of your questions. I'll do a Q&A show coming up here in a little while as well. And if you would, do me a favor and share this conversation with a friend. If something we talked about really hit you as a valuable thing, I felt like I had several valuable insights. If you felt that way too, please share this with a friend. If you find yourself in need of a fractional CMO, please shoot me a message on LinkedIn, and I'll be glad to give you a free consultation on what I might recommend for your business and what outcomes that we can achieve together. And you can check out my YouTube channel. Your Fractional CMO over on YouTube is where I'm posting a lot of other videos as well. So thank you, Timothy, for joining me today. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and we will see you on the next show. Bye.